The Abominable Love, a novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This is an intriguing epic story which resonates with love, resilience, courage, and sacrifice. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer, who may quote brief paragraphs for a review to be printed in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. This tale is a work of fiction, but the entire novel is based on a real love story between an Arab girl and an African boy. All names, characters, places, and events are either the product of the author's imagination or used literary. Therefore, any resemblance to actual people, living or dead, events, or locales is merely coincidental. Chapter 39. The Arab family's bias against the African husband. The lawfully invalidated Arab wife Insaf woke up extremely late the next morning. She is suffering from a headache on one side of her head. Her left eye is constantly shedding tears. She forced herself to sit on the bed. Slowly, she extended her legs and placed them on the floor. The first thing that caught her attention is the table with a large tray placed in front of it. Insaf understood that it is breakfast prepared by Hajj Abdullah's wife and placed it in front of her bed. She always loves and enjoys the food that Hajja Maryam cooks. So, she quickly went to the bathroom, washed her face, brushed her teeth, and went back to enjoying her delicious breakfast. While she is eating, the Arab wife remembered the events of the previous day. She thanked God who helped them escape from those two racist Arab policemen who caught her and her African husband red-handed in committing an Islamic crime forbidden in a public place, while they were embracing and kissing each other on the lips near the waters of the Nile riverbank. She also remembered the racist Sharia court decision that invalidated their Islamic marriage. She felt a little happy when she remembered her plan to escape with her African husband to South Sudan. Her annulled husband, Deng, had left the previous day, an hour after the two Arab police officers had left. He went to their shack in the shanty town of Al-Ashish neighborhood and promised the family that he would return in the morning to take his Arab wife. At the suggestion of Hajj Abdullah, the husband Deng agreed to allow his wife, Insaf, to sleep at his house. He also understood that without their marriage certificate proving their relationship, they could get into serious trouble with the law. No Arab policeman in the entire capital city of Sudan could believe them if they said they were spouses. To avoid further trouble, the African husband allowed his Arab wife to sleep at Hajj Abdullah's house and returned to his hut in the poor Al-Ashish neighborhood and promised to return the next day and take her. Before we recount what happened next to the Muslim couple whose marriage was annulled by the Sharia court, we must mention what happened to the effeminate neighbor Hamada, who played a dirty role in sexually blackmailing Insaf, which prompted her to slaughter Hajja Shadha. Before the end of the long trial of Insaf, Hamada was released from prison on bail paid by police officer Yasser Talha. A secret deal was made between the two inside the prison, stipulating that Hamada would inherit the two houses of his murdered aunt, Hajja Shadha, sell them, and give the corrupt officer, Yasser, 25% of the sale price of the two properties. Accordingly, he was released from prison and his name was removed from the crime in which the innocent girl, Insaf, was tried alone and sentenced to be hanged to death. The adulterous police officer, Yasser Talha, made the effeminate boy, Hamada, withdraw his previous statements and deny that he took pictures of the girl Insaf when she took off all her clothes and became completely naked in front of the wealthy old man, Sheikh Abdo. Hamada put the blame on his aunt, the murdered pimp, and falsely claimed that she was the one who photographed the naked girl Insaf whom she linked to her Saudi wealthy client. After completing this secret deal, Hamada inherited the profession of his late aunt, the evil woman Shadha Hassan, and became a pimp who trafficked in girls. When the new pimp, Hamada, returned to his old home and tried to approach the good Arab family, Hajj Abdullah expelled him and threatened to kill him if he approached his three chaste, noble, and honorable daughters, Safa, Mona, and Marwa again. Haja Mariam closed the small door that connected the two neighboring houses and prevented Kalb al-Sora, or the navel dog Hamada, from ghosting his unclean legs and stepping with his dirty feet in her holy abode and seeing the private parts of one of her daughters. Without a hijab or abaya, the brave and chaste girl, Insaf, did not meet Hamada, and she thanked God that the family expelled that obscene, effeminate boy who photographed her naked without her knowledge, and that his heinous act became robust evidence that condemned her to death and almost cost her life. In any case, while the legally annulled Arab wife, Insaf, is still eating breakfast at Hajj Abdullah's house, his wife, Haja Mariam, came to her room and wished her a good morning. Insaf replied, "Good morning, Auntie Mariam. Thank you for the delicious breakfast. You, my good daughter, deserve more than this simple food." "Thank you very much, Haja Mariam. You are a nice mother. How are you feeling today? Last night you looked very tired and weak." "I'm better off today, but I still have a slight headache. We told you not to go with Ding yesterday, but you didn't listen to us." "But Auntie, I cannot listen to the ruling of those racist religious men in the Sharia court and leave my legitimate Muslim husband. I am his lawful Muslim wife, and I carry his child in my womb, and I love him very much," Haja Mariam said angrily, turning her face away from Insaf to avoid eye contact. "I hope he loves you as you love him." "Of course, Ding loves me very much. What made you doubt my husband's love for me?" Haja Mariam's unexpected judgment baffled Insaf, so she demanded an explanation. Then Hajj Abdullah's angry wife felt justified in letting her boiling anger explode and telling the truth about the racist feelings that she has been carrying in her chest all night like bitter acid towards the black Negro boy, Deng. "If Deng loves you, why does he want to marry another Arab girl?" "What are you talking about, Auntie Mariam? I don't understand what you are saying about my husband Deng," Haja Mariam said angrily. "Of course, you heard me and understood what I told you. Who is the other Arab girl that Deng wants to marry?" "He wants to marry any one of my 3 daughters." "How did you know that?" "If you don't believe me, ask your uncle Hajj Abdullah. He will tell you that as soon as the Imam Maulana Sheikh al-Hidayah confirmed the cancellation of your Islamic marriage to him, Deng decided to marry one of our 3 Arab daughters." "Of course, what you said, Auntie Mariam, is not true. My husband Deng would never do that." "My daughter, Insaf, just trust yourself. All men are like this. To a man, a woman is just a body. Once he doesn't get her body, he pursues another girl." "Please, Haja Mariam, stop telling me these untrue things about my good and faithful husband. I cannot believe that my loving husband wants to marry one of your daughters. At least he would have told me that. If you do not want to accept my words, talk to your uncle Hajj Abdullah and ask him about the truthfulness of what I told you about Deng betraying you. He was the one who told me about his engagement to one of our daughters last night. My husband, Abdullah, is always like this. Even if Satan told him that he was a Muslim man, he would not hesitate to marry him to one of his daughters. Believe it or not, my daughter Insaf, one day my husband brought to one of my daughters a Sahar boy with an evil eye, and his father was a body man and wanted to marry her to him. For those who are not in the know, the Sahar is a witch doctor who is believed in Sudan to have the ability to eat someone's intestines without touching him. He can also change himself into a werewolf when the crescent became 14 days, full moon, and attacks and kills people. Then he eats their meat raw. The body man is like a zombie who can emerge from his grave 3 days after his death and burial. This is the name that the people of northern Sudan use to describe some of the black people of the African tribes, the so-called Negro Jingo, who are believed to be able to rise from their graves after being buried. Like ghosts or zombies, they attack anyone who approaches them. The Jalaba Arab people believe that both the Sahar witch doctor and the body zombie are placed under spells of curses, and therefore they are hated and subject to racial discrimination against them by the Arab northerners. Yesterday, Haja Mariam continued, without any shame, that my naive husband also brought your black Negro slave ex-husband Deng, and he wanted me to agree to his marriage to one of my Arab daughters. When Haja Mariam expressed her anger with those words laden with hateful racism, she began to hear Insaf crying and saw her slapping her face and pulling her hair out of righteous wrath. the righteous anger boiling in her chest like the lava of an exploding volcano. The loud wailing and bewailing of the infuriated Arab wife made Hajj Abdullah run quickly from the men's section and reach the women's section. He asked, "What is the problem, Hajja Maryam?" "I told Insaf what you told me yesterday about Deng's engagement to one of our daughters. I told you not to tell her. We must first convince one of our daughters to agree to marry him." When the outraged wife of Deng heard Hajj Abdullah's words, she screamed as she threw herself on the ground. No, no, no. She grabbed her hair with both hands, pulled it, slapped, and hit her face and head with her hands, and entered into a frantic rage. Then the extremely angry Arab wife said loudly, "No, how dare he do this to me after I suffered so much because of him? I left my father and mother. I ran away from my home and was displaced from my city because of his abominable love. I was accused and imprisoned because of his hateful love. I was even sentenced to death by hanging as a result of my forbidden love affair with him, who was racially hated and annulled. Is this how he repays my sacrificial love for him?" Hajja Maryam said after a long silence, "Please, my daughter, Insaf, do not harm yourself. Take care of the baby in your womb." The angry wife Insaf shouted, "I hate him, and I hate his child. I don't want to see his black face again. He is no different from all other selfish men." Hajja Maryam said, "You told the truth, my daughter. Deng's only desire in life is to marry an Arab girl. When he lost you as his white Arab wife, he came after my beautiful Arab daughters. But I swear to God, if he is the last man in the world, I would never agree to him marrying one of my Arab daughters." Insaf screamed at the top of her voice, "I hate him. I hate him so much. I don't want to see his ugly black face anymore." Unfortunately, the furious Arab wife's last words are heard by her African husband, making him wonder what happened to her. Deng then hesitated for a few minutes before he began knocking on the outer door of Hajj Abdullah's house. Hajja Maryam said, "Listen, Hajj Abdullah, if this is Deng, don't bring him to the women's section. Take him straight to the men's section. From what he told you yesterday at the house of the Imam Sheikh al-Hadiya and what he wanted to do with one of my white Arab daughters, I started to hate him too." When Hajja Maryam finished advising her husband about what he should do with the black Negro husband who is rejected by law and now hated by race, she gently lifted his white Arab wife off the floor and placed her on the bed. Then she kissed her forehead very lovingly and hugged her affectionately. In that unfriendly atmosphere, the unwanted African husband, Deng, entered alongside Hajj Abdullah. The angry voice of his beloved Arab wife, Insaf, is still screaming unpleasant words such as, "I hate him so much. I don't want to see his ugly black face anymore." Deng's body is paralyzed and turned into stone for a few seconds. When the blood flowed again in his veins, he heard the sweet voice of his beautiful Arab wife saying, "Don't let him come in here and try to see me. I don't want to see him again for the rest of my life. I'll spit on his monstrous black face if he comes here." While his body was dripping with sweat, Deng asked Hajj Abdullah in a stuttering voice, "What happened to my beloved wife, Insaf?" The first impression that appeared in his worry's mind is that his beloved Arab wife has lost her mind and become crazy. At that critical moment in his life, no one at the house could convince him that his beloved wife, Insaf, could change overnight and become another disgusting, racist Arab girl. Hajj Abdullah said politely, "My son, come and visit the men's section and sit with me." Inside one of the men's rooms, the good Arab man, Hajj Abdullah, briefly narrated to the African husband, Deng, the incident that had angered his Arab wife, Insaf. "But my dear uncle, I did not propose to marry one of your 3 Arab daughters. You're the one who made that suggestion. I thought maybe if I gave you one of my Arab daughters, she could fill the vacuum created in your heart by the absence of her sister Insaf, who is separated from you by law. But, uncle, Insaf is still my wife, and I am her husband. I did not divorce her, and she did not separate herself from me. Neither she nor I believed or accepted the ruling of that unjust and hateful racist law issued by the Sharia court. But the ruling of the Sharia court is based on the Book of God and the Sunnah of his infallible Prophet Muhammad. May God bless him and grant him peace. Only the accursed Satan could produce such a foolish law to separate legally married Muslims like me and Insaf. This law of incompetence between the Arab tribe of the wife and the African tribe of the husband was inspired by Satan, the devil, to separate us unjustly, except that I am black and my wife is white, but we both have red blood running in our veins. Hajj Abdullah said angrily, "Listen, Deng, even though you and Insaf have no regard for the rule of God's law and his infallible prophet, I care about it more than I care about my family members and myself. Therefore, if you take this Arab girl Insaf from here and stay with her as spouses in your hut, and you both commit indecency and have forbidden sex, my family and I will sever our relationship with her forever. So far, I treat her just like one of my 3 daughters. But if she crosses the boundaries of God and his messenger and crosses the Islamic red lines and goes with you and lives with you in a forbidden cohabitation relationship again, as you both did yesterday evening on the riverbank, we will not open our door if she comes back to our house." When Hajj Abdullah threatened to cut off the runaway Arab girl from his family and disown her, the 2 angry women, Maryam and Insaf, rushed to the men's section and joined the fight. All this time, the 2 angry women stand, peeping through holes at the partition separating the harem quarters from the men's court, and listen to the heated conversation and religious debate between the Arab man and the African boy. Then the angry wife, Maryam, shouted at her husband, "Listen, Hajj Abdullah. Insaf is the daughter of Arab tribes and origins and from a good and noble Shakia family. She had suffered enough with this traitorous and reckless Southern African boy. She just told me that she doesn't want anything to do with Deng anymore and can't have anything else to do with him. He must leave this house immediately and go to his place in the shanty town of Al-Ashash neighborhood." Hajj Abdullah said, "Please, Deng, go to your hut. All the neighbors in the houses next to us are listening to this scandalous quarrel between you and your ex-wife." The unwanted African husband looked at his so-called Arab ex-wife with eyes filled with hot tears. The angry Arab girl, Insaf, spat on the ground, then turned her back to him and walked to the harem section, followed by the extremely angry woman, Hajja Maryam, who claimed that her great-grandfather is Al-Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet Muhammad. Then the legally abolished and racially outcast black African husband bowed his head and left the hostile Arab environment. Never before had Deng felt so humiliated and hateful racial discrimination as on this black day when his white Arab wife, Insaf, conspired with the biased Arabs and expelled him like a black dog whose owner has rejected it because of the color of its skin. Chapter 40. The father's surprise visit to the hut of his wayward son. After divorcing his Ethiopian wife, Ababa, and expelling his son, Deng, Mr. Majak Nasser locked himself in the 4 corners of his house. He is deeply hurt by his son's stern decision to pursue his defense in criminal court for his former Arab girlfriend, Insaf. He convinced himself that his African son rejected him and pursued a fallen Arab girl. She was a prostitute and a street girl that any man could take to his bed and commit adultery with her for a small price of haram money. Despite this, the grieving father, deep in his heart, always misses his only son, Deng, and longs for his beloved Ethiopian wife, Ababa. It has been many days and many months since his son and wife left home. From time to time, Mr. Majak Nasser hears news about his disobedient son through relatives and friends. He heard that the criminal Arab girl was convicted of murder and sentenced to death through hanging, but she obtained a presidential pardon. Shortly after, he was told that his prodigal son married the same accursed Arab girl, who was the main reason for his son's rejection of his father and mother and the reason for the divorce and separation between his parents. The informants who brought the unpleasant news claimed that his African son seemed incredibly happy with his beautiful Arab wife. Such positive information increased Mr. Nasser's sadness and loneliness. However, the recent negative news about the prodigal son Deng disturbed the father Majak Nasser's heart and increased his sadness. The person who brought the negative report supported his point of view by saying that the husband Deng has been living alone for a month. When the neighbors asked the African husband, he admitted that his Arab wife had left him permanently and expelled him from where she lived. Moreover, The informant said that the African husband was living in a very miserable state after his Arab wife separated from him. Since the day she left from their small hut, he has not shaved his beard or mustache. He did not comb his hair or wash his clothes. He wears black garments of mourning all the time. He dropped out of his medical school and spends most of his time in his one-room shack in the poor Alishash shantytown. For 2 days, the father, Majak Nasser, resisted the paternal impulse and the voice of conscience urging him to see his missing son. But on the 3rd day, he surrendered to the voice of his conscience and decided to go and save his lost son. He got up from his chair and put on his beautiful military uniform. The truth of the matter is that Mr. Majak Nasser is a lieutenant general and a senior official in the Sudanese army. His ex-wife, the Abyssinian woman Mrs. Ababa Nasser, Ding's mother, is an English language teacher at the girls' high school in the Riyadh neighborhood in Khartoum, which is one of the most prestigious and luxurious neighborhoods in the triangular Sudanese capital. On that day, after finally making his fatherly decision, the lieutenant general walked to his double garage, which contained 2 cars, one military and the other private. Then he got into his own brand new car and started the engine. While he is driving his car, the father wondered how his son could live in a disreputable neighborhood like Al-Ashish with a criminal street prostitute. Before that, he lived with his parents in the best neighborhood in Khartoum called the City of Riyadh. Al-Ashash is a shanty town located on the outskirts of the cosmopolitan city of Khartoum. It is a slum locality or settlement of improvised housing known as Jingo slave slums. The huts are made of plywood, corrugated metal, plastic sheets, and cardboard boxes collected by destitute Africans from garbage containers discarded by the rich. Its African population is poor, like the so-called outcasts in the slums of Bombay's Darabi neighborhood. Most of them are black Sudanese displaced from South Sudan, the Nuba Mountains, and the Darfur region due to civil wars, famines, floods, and desertification. The Lieutenant General Mr. Majak Nasser has never visited before this notorious side of the cosmopolitan city of Sudan. What would he do if one of his fellow military officers, relatives, or friends saw him there? He might conclude that he is looking for a prostitute to fill the void in his life after he divorced his Abyssinian wife, or for drugs or alcohol to compensate for the loss of his family. As Mr. Majak Nasser drove his car through the narrow and winding lanes of the shantytown, he is very puzzled by his son's foolishness. How could he leave his beautiful residence in the affluent neighborhood to come and stay in such a disreputable locality? For a few minutes, Mr. Majak Nasser's mind is mystified by the mystery of love. When his expensive car stopped in front of his son's small hut, many children and stray dogs surrounded it. These skinny, emaciated black children are either naked or barefoot, and most of the dogs are without owners, rabid and infected. Mr. Nasser is afraid to get out of his car and face those hungry dogs and the emaciated children. He saw the children touching his car and smearing it with their dirty hands while begging for alms. The rabid dogs are barking at the car and wanting to break down its door and attack and eat the huge black human being hiding from them like a gorilla in a cage at the zoo. The frightened father's eyes became even more frightened when they suddenly saw the tall, thin, black ghost-like person who opened the door of his son's hut and walked towards him. For some time, Mr. Majak Nasser is unable to recognize his son Ding. There is nothing left of his prodigal son that would make him known to his father. Instead of the handsome face, athletic body, fancy clothes, and friendly smile, he saw a gloomy face, a black dress, and a thin body that looked like a zombie who had come out of his grave. "Dad," said Ding surprisingly. The familiar voice of his only son jolted Mr. Majak Nasser out of the shell of his luxury car. Instead of greeting or embracing his son, the father walked straight into the hut. His little son's nest seemed to the father to be a den of thieves and not a dwelling for a beloved couple. Ding and Insaf's small hut room will be judged by Lieutenant General Nasser's standards as a storage room. Even one of the 4 bathrooms in his luxurious mansion is larger than his son's hut. Also, the 2-car garage is larger and more beautiful than this hut, which looks like a 2-bird nest hanging on a tree. There's nothing in this little nest that the rich daddy would call a human being's habitat. It's one small unit overall. The bedroom, living room, kitchen, and bathroom are combined into one space. It does not have a toilet. The lovers use in nearby dirty public washrooms, which are used by hundreds of other Al-Ashish residents, men, women, and children. And woe to any female who dared to come into that public toilet at night. A bunch of males would gang rape her to death. There is no furniture inside the small nest, and there is not even a bed. Before they parted, the lovers slept on an old carpet spread on the floor. The father did not wait for his son to offer him a seat. He saw a small tin that looked like a wooden chair and sat on it. The thing shook and swayed when the lieutenant general sat on it, and he has to move it backward to support his back on the straw wall of the nest. When the father became sure that he would not fall behind or to either side, he began to address his lost son. Meanwhile, the rebellious son sat on the floor in the cut-up carpet with his hands crossed as if he is a pupil in seclusion to memorize the verses of the Holy Quran, and his father, like a sheik, wanted to teach him the small surahs of Jozo Amma with a whip. "So, she left you," Mr. Majak Nasir said angrily. The lost son was unable to respond to his father's opening sentence. He knew that his father would not accept any justification for the misunderstanding that separated him from his Arab wife. "I have been informed that you have left your medical school and no longer continuing your studies at the prestigious University of Khartoum." Ding bowed his head and remained silent. "Even a stray dog that has no owner will not live here." The prodigal son began to weep. "Can you please open your mouth and tell me why she left you?" "There is a misunderstanding between us," Ding said in a hesitant voice. "You disobeyed your father and mother, and this is the punishment for your reckless behavior." Ding stopped weeping and looked at his father. He wanted to speak, but his father interrupted him and asked him again, "Can you tell me exactly why she left you after you sacrificed your good African family, your beautiful Christian fiancée Susie, and your study of medicine at university for her sake?" Before Ding could answer the question, his father answered his own question. "I can tell you why Insaf left you. She expected to live in a palace with her body full of gold and jewels, but when she found you to be a miserable person, she left you. She is now living as a second Muslim wife or secret concubine in an upscale neighborhood with a rich old Arab geezer as her sugar daddy. Of course, I don't blame her for that. A homeless girl found on the streets will always act like a street girl. As a matter of fact, she's worse than a street and homeless woman. She is a dangerous criminal, murderer, thief, and dirty prostitute. Had the president of Sudan not sympathized with her because she was an Arab like him, she would have been hanged to death for her heinous crimes." The angry father's words of condemnation of the innocent Arab wife made her African husband open his mouth and speak out his heart. The prodigal son exploded in anger, saying, "Insaf has left me because of you, father." The father looked at his son in amazement. "We were separated because my father is Majak Nasir and her father is Sulla al-Junaid. More simply put, my father is a Negro African and her father is a free Arab. I am also a son of the Dinka tribe and she is a daughter of the Shurjia tribe." Mr. Majak Nasir shouted with great anger, "Didn't we expect this in advance and tell you this from the beginning? Didn't we tell you that her Arab people will not accept you as a husband for their daughter because in their eyes you are just a black-faced Negro slave? Yes, you and my mother told me that before, but Insaf never looked at me in such a disgusting, racist way. If she had, she would not have lived with me in this little nest that you said not even a stray dog would live in. If she saw me as a black-faced Negro slave, and she was a free white Arab, she would not have married me and now carrying my child in her womb. Then why did she leave you?" The father screamed so angry that he almost flipped upside down from his tin on which he is sitting like a man riding the back of a colt. "Insaf did not leave me willingly. The Sharia court annulled our marriage." "Why did the Sharia court cancel your Islamic marriage if it was permissible halal and conducted in accordance with the Book of God, the Holy Quran, and the Sunnah of his beloved Prophet Muhammad? It had been cancelled in the Sharia court because of what I have just told you, father. This is nonsense." Mr. Majak Nasir shouted angrily. "I cannot believe that the Sharia court annulled your marriage to her because you are my son. Then the son Dang took out a small piece of paper from his bag and handed it to his African father. Mr. Majak Nasser quickly read the legal document and threw it away as if it is a piece of paper stained with urine and feces. This is nonsense. There is nothing like this in Islam. I had never heard of this racist law before. The African son Dang replied, "Neither do I." The father continued to say with great astonishment, the reason because the law of inadequacy between the wife's Arab tribe and the husband's African tribe. Who is her father? Isn't he a religious fanatic from the Ansar al-Sunnah group or a terrorist from the Muslim Brotherhood? I wouldn't even agree to let him polish my military boots in the street if he were a sidewalk polisher. Does he have a car or does he even know how to drive? What are his academic qualifications? Does he know how to read and write? He is a graduate of a preschool kalwa for memorizing the Holy Quran, so he is illiterate and does not even know how to print his name. The angry African father stopped and looked seriously at his son. Then he clapped his hands together and said sarcastically, "But I'm glad for this sad ending for you." The stubborn son who refused to listen to the wise advice of his parents had to learn it the hard way. "We asked you to stay away from that Arab girl when we were in the city of Al-Gadarif, but you did not listen to us. So, see what the consequence of your disobedience is." Dang's tears continued to fall on his lap like raindrops. "And after all this happened to you, why didn't you humble yourself and come to your father to ask him for forgiveness?" The prodigal son remained silent. "Do you think that I have a heart of stone like her cruel Arab father, who threw her on the streets until she turned into a homeless girl, a murderer, a thief, and a prostitute?" The son shouted at his father angrily, "Insaf is neither a prostitute nor a murderer. So, after all this, you still want to defend that useless Arab woman. Insaf left me because of a simple misunderstanding. Eventually, she will return to me and the waters will return to normal and we will live with each other again in this little nest. Then you will be violating the Sharia law if you take her as your wife again. Neither my Arab wife, Insaf, nor I, her African husband, Dang, believe in this unjust ruling of the Sharia court. Listen, my son Dang, I did not come here to argue with you about Sharia laws. I have come to offer you another chance for repentance and forgiveness and to bring you home. If you want me to return to your home, you must accept me along with my wife and the child she is carrying in her womb. I will never allow that accursed Arab woman to step foot on my doorstep. If she comes here into this filthy small nest, don't be surprised if she is reported to the police. Insaf is my wife, and the fetus in her womb is my child. If anyone tries to harm them, whether he is a police officer or a relative, I will be the first person to sacrifice his life for them." The angry father listened to his wayward son's last words with disbelieving ears. Then he stood up from the tin and marched out of the hut like a military soldier in parade. Shortly after, the prodigal son began to hear the sound of his stiff-necked father's car making a loud noise while the rabid dogs are barking at it and the miserable black children are screaming and cursing him because he hasn't given them alms. Chapter 41. I cannot leave my husband and my home. The quarrel between the eternally intimate lovers Insaf and Dang is like a mountain of glaciers that took a long time to melt. It's been just over a month since they were legally and racially separated from each other. During that month, the African husband, Dang, visited Hajj Abdullah's house 3 times. Each time he was sent away. During his last visit, Hajj Abdullah advised him not to return to his doorstep again. After that, the African husband concluded that his marital relationship with his Arab wife has actually ended forever. In any case, Hajja Maryam respected the African Negro until her husband decided to marry him to their Arab daughter, Safa. Since then, her hostility towards him intensified, and she began to hate him more than she hated the smell of her own excrement. The first evil idea that came to her hateful heart was to separate him from his Arab Muslim wife. When she succeeded in doing so, she was determined to fill Insaf's heart with more hatred towards Dang. She did this by playing a dirty double game. She made the estranged wife believe that her rejected black African husband married her because she was a white Arab and had straight, long hair. On the other hand, she convinced the legally outcast African husband, Dang, that Insaf no longer loved him or cared for him. The Arab wife never knew that her African husband had come to meet her 3 times. Whenever he visited the house, Hajj Abdullah's wife would give Insaf false information, telling her that the knocker at the door was a beggar, a vegetable peddler, or someone who had come to the wrong address. Despite all this, Insaf's anger at Deng did not last even a single day. As soon as she shouted at him and kicked him out of Hajj Abdullah's house, she felt the terrible pain in her heart of losing him. She hoped that he would come back that same night and apologize to her for his marital infidelity and for thinking about taking a Muslim wife who would be a Dara or rival and harmful second Muslim wife to her. She stayed up all night thinking about him. Insaf knew that the quarrel between her and Deng is shrouded in mystery. She wished she had given him a chance to explain the mystery. She assured herself that Deng could not have meant from the bottom of his heart or seriously thought what he had said to Hajj Abdullah. The next day, she felt incredibly sad when an entire day passed without her husband returning to take her to their love nest. As the days passed, the Arab wife waited impatiently for her African husband to take her to their hut. She was tempted several times to go to the shantytown of Al-Ashish neighborhood and find out what prevented him from returning. Meanwhile, Hajj Abdullah's wife always discouraged the Arab wife, Insaf, from thinking about returning to her traitorous Negro husband, Deng. One day, the Arab wife Insaf was surprised when Hajja Maryam brought her an engagement proposal. The Muslim man who submitted an engagement request to marry Insaf is a divorced husband who is an Arab and a relative of Hajja Maryam. This man has divorced his second Muslim wife and is looking for another Arab girl to marry her. His first Muslim wife died many years ago. He has many children and a large number of grandchildren, and his age is older than Hajj Abdullah. Insaf refused the engagement request immediately and asked Hajja Maryam not to bring her another marriage proposal and reminded her that she was still inviolable and married under the protection of a Muslim husband who had not yet divorced her. After the first month of their separation, the Arab wife's longing for her African husband reached beyond her ability to keep it inside her heart. By then, she was 4 months pregnant. The child inside her womb and her love for his father made her long for a family reunion. Despite her intense longing, she does not want Hajj Abdullah's family to think that she is pursuing the black African young man who rejected and betrayed her and decided to marry another Arab wife, a virgin, instead of her. Then Insaf told Hajja Maryam that she wanted to recover some of her possessions from her husband Deng's hut. Hajj Abdullah's wife stood against the idea and made her husband stand by her side. When they are unable to convince her, they settled for a compromise. The 3 agreed that Hajj Abdullah would accompany Insaf to her legally annulled husband's hut and bring her belongings. Moreover, they sternly warned her that if she changed her mind and decided to stay with the black African boy, the family would condemn her as an apostate Muslim woman who is disobeying the commands and prohibitions of the law of God and his messenger and disown her forever. Insaf made them an empty promise without intending to keep it. Then the Arab wife and the Muslim man, Hajj Abdullah, took a taxi and traveled to the shantytown where the rejected African husband lived in a small hut that not even a stray dog would agree to live in. As once the military lieutenant General Father Majak Nasser said, Insaf could not be able to hold back her tears when she saw Deng in his sackcloth of mourning and his miserable condition. She turned her face to hide her tears. Then Hajj Abdullah told the legally annulled African husband why they have come. However, the African husband Deng realized the real reason for his Arab wife Insaf's visit to their love nest. Therefore, he went to her and knelt in front of her as if she is the beauty queen Helen, and he is her lover, Paris, who must kidnap her from Hajj Abdullah's family and start the Trojan War between the racist Sudanese Arabs and the oppressed Dingo Africans. Deng remained on his knees until Insaf turned her face and looked at him. After that, he stood directly in front of her, and they looked into each other's eyes until they became 2 souls in one body, as they were before their painful separation. Deng said, Insaf, how long are you going to boycott me? How long will you deny me? You didn't even give me a chance to explain the misunderstanding between us that day. Hajj Abdullah tried to console me in my distress by saying that if I asked for the hand of his Arab daughter Safa in marriage, he would not reject me. But I had never proposed to his daughter, and I have no intention of leaving you and marrying another Arab girl, even if she is Miss Universe. The Arab wife asked her African husband, "Why didn't you come back and explain this to me?" "I came 3 times. And every time, Hajj Abdullah's wife kicked me out of her door as if I were a beggar, a thief, or a stray dog. The 3rd time, Hajj Abdullah himself told me that I should leave his doorstep and not return to his house again." Then the Arab wife, Insaf, turned her gaze away from her African husband, Deng, and faced her uncle, Hajj Abdullah. She is not happy to confront the good Muslim man of his racist wife's lies and hypocrisy. She always respects him and considers him a real father to her, adopting her as his daughter. She had not forgotten for a moment the day he had taken her out of the dirty dumpster and brought her into his house and took care of her. However, her intolerance of the hateful racial prejudice against her African husband forced her to throw her heart away with those feelings. Then she gave her uncle Hajj Abdullah a long look before speaking to him. "Your wife deceived me about my husband Ding. She made me believe that he is no longer interested in me and does not love me because the Sharia court separated me from him forever. Moreover, she lied to me when she told me that my black African husband wanted to marry her white Arab daughter, Safa. My daughter, Insaf, my wife did this because she loves you. She doesn't want you to get into any more trouble with law enforcement officers. You know what happened that day when you refused to listen to us and went with Deng to the riverbank and both of you were caught by the police while you were doing something indecent and forbidden in a public place that only bad Arab girls could do. I know, Uncle Abdullah, that you did better to me than my father, Hajj Sulla al-Junaid, did to me. I know you are a good man, but I want you to know that I do not see my African husband the same way others see him. For me, he is the perfect husband. Deng sacrificed his family relationship with his father and mother for the sake of his love for me. He was expelled from his family home, his African father disowned him, and his Ethiopian mother divorced because he insisted on appointing a lawyer to defend me in the criminal court when my Arab family left me to die alone in prison. For my sake, he separated himself from his African fiancée, Susie, who is a university-graduated and gainfully employed Christian girl. He even left his university studies in medicine and sold his car to pay my defense fees. Therefore, had it not been for him, I would have been convicted of 4 false murder charges, only one of which I committed in defense of my honor. So, I love him sincerely just as he loves me with every cell in his body." Hajj Abdullah said calmly, "But my dear daughter, Insaf, this African man, Deng, is no longer your Muslim husband. You cannot live with him as husband and wife after the court of God and his messenger annulled your Islamic marriage in which I functioned as your Muslim guardian. You cannot go beyond God's limits." Deng shouted angrily, "This is not God's limits. These are false laws invented by Arab people to justify racial discrimination against their fellow African human beings. God is love and just, and all people whom he created in his image and likeness are equal before him." Although Deng is a Muslim believer, but when he was a child his Abyssinian Christian mother Ababa used to take him to Sunday school in her Ethiopian Orthodox Church, and thus made him learn many good teachings about the Holy Bible. Some of the fundamental creeds of Christianity that he had learned and never forgotten are God is love and just, and all people whom he created in his image and likeness are equal before him. The Muslim man Hajj Abdullah ignored the words of the African boy, which he has neither heard before nor grasped their deep spiritual meanings, and said to the Arab girl, "My beloved daughter, Insaf, take your clothes and other belongings, and let us return to our home and family." The Arab wife, Insaf, looked first at her African husband, Deng, and then turned her face toward her uncle, Hajj Abdullah. Her eyes are full of tears. She wiped away her tears before saying to the good old man, "I cannot leave my husband and my home and go with you, my good uncle, Hajj Abdullah. Deng is no longer your legal Muslim husband. If you want to live with him, you will live in an adulterous relationship that will be abhorrent to God and his messenger." "This is not true, uncle. The Sharia court ruling is a racist decision, and I do not believe in it. It justifies racial discrimination against African people. Muslims are treated as masters and slaves. My daughter, Insaf, The decision of the Sharia court is based on the Holy Quran and the Sunnah of the infallible Messenger of God, and therefore this is the law of God and the Sunnah of his beloved chosen Muhammad. May God bless him and grant him peace. The ruling of these stupid judges in the Sharia court is not from God, but rather from the inspiration of the accursed Satan. When the Arab wife, Insaf, finished her last words, Hajj Abdullah declared her openly before her African husband, Dang, who is legally abolished, that she has become a blasphemous woman, an infidel, an apostate Muslimah, and an atheist feminist, and he disowned her forever. Then he told her that she should never come to his house again, no matter what happened to her in the future.